Hello, it is Saturday afternoon. We're in January, on the 16th, I think. Or is it the 15th? I'll have to look at the calendar. Anyway, it's Saturday. And I am reading out of Lydia, which is Book 2, following on from Book One, Bliss After Life, which I finished the other day. It had 108 chapters, and it ended with the birth of Lydia. The story here plays in March 2012. Her birth was the 9th of March 2012 at 22 minutes past 10 at night. Anyway, so they're all gathering now to discuss what happened, and they have all met up, and Faye has come home with her little baby girl, Lydia, and they're all sitting in the kitchen. And I continue. This is still chapter 5, and it's a continuation of chapter 5. Did you know that she was going to be born 3 weeks early, Melanie? Holly had just joined them with Susan and David behind her to sit down with their soup. They all waited for her reply. Yes, I knew she was going to be, but to be honest, I did not think about these things at the time. I would never want to be told the exact date anyway. There's so much information, but there's also free will, and the exact time of birth is for Lydia alone and Faye. I'm not good with dates anyway. It was lovely to meet Faye without any idea of timing. I did know that all would be well though, but I felt all of you were fairly calm about it once Faye and Ben decided to stay in England. It was nice to have this change of plan, don't you think? The universe helps when things line up. She had become quiet all of a sudden, as she could feel Mio so close and wanting to speak. Isn't that the truth? Evelyn had just heard the last sentence and sat next to David on the bench. Everyone was very surprised, more than they would admit, that Melanie had actually answered the question. Everyone had heard of Mio by now. So, how far are things predestined? Tony was as fascinated as they all were. They could actually get an answer, which was meant to be from a realm of infinite intelligence. And despite knowing Melanie much better now, all had felt that this was not Melanie anymore at this moment, and all eyes were on her. You decide when you are born and when you will leave. The answer was very clear, and Mio fell silent. Melanie looked detached at each of them. Your own parents died together in an accident when you still needed them. How do you feel about that, with this in mind? Melanie felt the same pain everybody feels when a loved one dies. The words were clear. Yes, she said it was like a sword separating one life from another, Tony remembered her saying. No, she seemed not ready to lose her parents, but the insight it gave her has been of enormous help to her development, and everyone connected to her. With accepting us and accepting that Gaia benefits from some beings who are more aware than others, and that allowed her to accept her role as a facilitator, a catalyst, or a way shower. There are many words for people like Melanie. In fact, you're all that, potentially. Melanie again paused and just looked at each of them with detachment. Is Lydia going to be special? Ben couldn't help asking. The atmosphere in the room had become expectant. Of course she is. Melanie was back and felt the question might as well be answered by her, because just being here with everybody felt so warm and special. Can you not all feel how wonderful the last few months have been already? She had said this without thinking, but once it was out she realized that it was true. They had all had a brilliant Christmas. So much had changed in the last few months, and although the planet had not got dark or something drastic like shown in films and so-called disaster predictions, for each and every one of them, life had changed much. Chapter 6. Anna. Anna was intently listening to Mio, and when Melanie was back and asked the question, she immediately thought of Peter. Leaving Russia, her ordeal last year with the people trafficking, when she was one of the people, her entry into the refuge, she felt safe here. It felt like she had a really good future ahead of her. The last 5 months have led to so many changes in her life. She was now co-running a woman's refuge in a beautiful house in southwest London, and had made really good friends, and it was true. She did feel wonderful. Yes, true for me, Anna said, and went through her list of changes. When she finished, she embraced Susan. She was only a tiny bit taller. I want to thank you, Susan, for being so open-hearted with me, even before you met David again. Everybody laughed as he had put his arms around Susan's shoulder when Mio was talking. Anna, I want to thank you. I've had many women and children coming through my house. The last 15 years have been rewarding, but also hard work and complete focus, really. Your arrival here at the end of last year was a godsend. Anna knew she meant it. Susan had had more time for herself and David. Chapter 7. David. Yes, you were a godsend. When I met Susie Q last Christmas, she was still the stressed Earth Mother, and look at her now. David twirled Susan around, who did look rather radiant in her new dress, colourful and spring-like. She did not look like the typical grandmother at all, but then she had noticed that this whole perception of grandmothers changed when she had her first grandson. But then he realized that his idea of grandparents had changed when he had his first grandson, Trudy's little boy in Australia, who was 3 now, and he himself did not feel old at all right now. So I agreed too, Melanie. Everything is wonderful. Meeting Susan in the shop just before Christmas, feeling so free after the years of caring for Margaret. My move towards freeing myself from the company had been going for 20 years or more. Coming back to England, my homeland, now with my daughter running the company, I would definitely agree. I wouldn't have believed it a year ago. So much had changed in the last few months, all for the better. I was looking forward to moving into my new house. David looked around. Chapter 8. Holly. They heard the doorbell. Chris and Frida. Everybody laughed because it was so obvious that Holly also agreed with the positive vibes in the house. I can't wait to see Frida's reaction to Lydia. Holly rushed to open the door and embraced Chris and Frida, who was wiggling on his arm. She took Frida off his hands and cuddled the happily yapping little bundle before she set her down. She worked her whole body and greeted everybody individually, and then jumped onto Melanie's lap, where she rested her head on her knee, looking at everybody again. How much richer her life had become over the last few months, Holly thought. Chris had taken more interest in the refuge since his retirement, and had been a great help to her sister, which in turn had given her the chance to change things in her life. She had been writing much, and Frida, she felt, was perfect. They had found the perfect little dog. Chris had been infected with all the romance in the air, and so had she herself. It had been good for her to give some of her work up and concentrate on herself and on Chris again. A new baby in the family. Life was good, she thought, and agreed with Melanie. Chapter 9. Chris. Conversation resumed, with Chris being asked if he thought the last few months had been wonderful. Is this a quiz question? Chris went around hugging everybody. He had really looked forward to meeting the new baby. Frida had been as good as gold in the car, sleeping most of the journey in the travel crate. He had been listening to an excellent play on the journey, and had pondered on the new turn in their lives. A dog changes a household. He had to agree with Holly's feelings about energies and vibes. Having worked in the refuge since he had more time, he learned so much about, well, everything to do with emotions. Like Holly said, open your heart, but don't take responsibility where you have no influence at all. Being no longer in an office, having the time to listen to some of the women in the refuge, helping out, he had opened his eyes and made him appreciate his own life. Holly and Frida. Where is Faye and Lydia? And the answer is the Pope a Catholic? Everybody burst out laughing, and they all stopped when Faye, with little Lydia on her arm, came into the room. Chapter 9. Faye and Lydia. Hello everybody, introducing Lydia. Her second name has yet to be decided. She grinned, and Ben already had his arms outstretched to take his daughter and show her around. She yawned and opened her eyes, looking at all the eyes looking at her, her mouth turned up. She's smiling, they couldn't help grinning, and don't say it's wind. Now all were giggling, and Lydia was looking as if she studied each and every laughing face. Her mouth turned up more, her face turned to Ben's chest, and she gave a sniffle. Her little mouth made it obvious what she wanted. Gosh, I only just fed her an hour or so ago. Faye smiled. It felt so good to be so wanted and needed. She took Lydia and settled herself on the low chair, an old-fashioned nursing chair Susan had apparently had forever, but it was now upcycled with a new look, finally fulfilling its intended purpose. Wow, this is a good chair for nursing. She settled herself with Lydia on her knees. Everybody felt so happy. She could not remember ever feeling so much all the time. She had been so full of love for Ben. Now, having little Lydia in her arms, she felt even better, comfortably sucking, looking at her with half-open eyes. She felt so good. She felt glad that she could feed her. She remembered many conversations with her mother about the goodness of mother's milk. She was so looking forward to showing Lydia to her mum and dad. They had seen her on the screen. Both were so impatient to hold her. Her life was so utterly different here. She would be 27 this summer. She looked at her baby, a healthy little miracle. She knew anatomy well. She was looking forward to practicing acupuncture, whilst here she wanted a chance to see what was going on in the world of medicine here in England. Once they decided on the timing of everything, Faye settled into the chair. I think I'll stop here at chapter 9, and the next one is chapter 10, and this is Lydia. Well, I was going to finish it here, and I'm finishing it now.